The funeral was yesterday. I remember the numbness, the whispers, the pit in my stomach that never seemed to go away. My name is Patty. I am the widow of Daniel. It's strange, really, being called a widow. In just a blink of an eye, everything changes. You go from someone's wife to someone's memory. And now, the hardest part is not just losing him, but losing everything else that followed. I've been with Daniel for over 10 years, married for 7. We had everything, a house we both dreamed of, a life we worked hard to build, and a family that had room for the future. Or at least, that's what I thought. But when Daniel passed away, I quickly realized that everything I thought was secure, everything I thought we had, was not really mine. The biggest shock came from Joan, my mother-in-law. Joan and I never really got along, but I didn't think it would come to this. After Daniel's death, it all started to unravel. She had been controlling for years, even when Daniel was alive. I never made decisions without her giving me her opinion, whether I wanted it or not. But when he died, it was clear that the control she had over him wasn't just about love, it was about power. I thought I would inherit everything. Our house, the savings, the life we built. I thought Daniel's will would protect me. But Joan thought otherwise. The first blow came when I read the will. I was shocked to find out that Joan had been named executor of the estate, and there was a clause that gave her the option to buy the house from me at a ridiculously low price. I knew this was wrong. Daniel would never have wanted her to have it. He wanted me to stay in our home, but Joan didn't care about that. She didn't care about honoring his wishes. She just cared about making sure I had nothing left. I tried to fight her legally, but I quickly found out that Joan had deep connections. She knew the right lawyers, the right people, and she wasn't afraid to use her influence. The legal battle became overwhelming. I was already grieving the loss of my husband, and now I was fighting a woman who had made it clear she would stop at nothing to take everything from me. Joan went as far as to start spreading rumors about me to the family, telling them that I was squatting in the house and that I was trying to take advantage of the situation. The whispers became louder. I could feel the walls closing in. I started feeling like a prisoner in my own home. It wasn't just the legal battles. It was the constant pressure, the isolation from the family. They were all turning against me, siding with Joan, the woman who had manipulated them for years. One day I came home to find my car had been towed. At first I thought it was a mistake, but when I found out it had been reported by Joan, her signature on the document, I knew she was getting more aggressive. I confronted her, heart racing. "You did this. You had my car towed." She didn't even flinch. "Why are you so dramatic?" she said, a mocking smile playing on her lips. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." I couldn't believe my ears. She was cold, calculating, and cruel. But I knew this wasn't over. The next few weeks were hell. Joan went after me in every possible way. The legal pressure increased. I was constantly getting calls from her lawyers, trying to intimidate me into signing away my rights. But it wasn't just the legal battles. She started showing up at my house, unannounced, looking through my things, accusing me of being ungrateful. The gaslighting was intense. One evening, I received a call from my best friend, Mia. "Patty, you need to get out of there. Joan's been talking to everyone about how she's going to take your house, and now she's spreading lies to your friends too. You're losing people. You can't keep fighting this alone." I was on the edge. I had no support left, no friends, no one who believed me. Joan had manipulated everyone. But I wasn't going to give up. I started recording everything. Every conversation, every email, every phone call. I knew I had to have evidence to fight back. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I began to notice the small things. The little hints that Joan's greed was much more widespread than I could have imagined. One day, I saw Joan at a family gathering wearing a stunning diamond necklace, along with matching earrings and a bracelet. It was too extravagant. Daniel and I had never been that wealthy, and we certainly didn't live the kind of life where expensive jewelry was common. I asked her innocently where she had gotten such a beautiful set. "Oh, this?" She smiled, eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "It was a gift from a dear friend." She waved it off, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. It was too much for a gift. I knew it. I tried not to show my suspicion, but I couldn't let it go. I started paying closer attention to her. Her lifestyle, her spending habits, everything was out of place. She never had this kind of wealth before Daniel's death. Joan had never had this kind of wealth. Daniel always handled the family's finances, and there was no way she could afford the jewelry she was flaunting on her own. I began digging through the family's financial records I had access to as part of the estate process. What I found sent chills down my spine. Joan had been siphoning money from Daniel's company, the family business he had built from the ground up, for years. There were countless payments that shouldn't have been there, charges to luxury hotels, private jet bookings, and personal shopping sprees. She had been using the company's funds to live a life of luxury while pretending to be a humble widow. But it didn't end there. Joan had been manipulating financial records to hide her tracks, even going as far as to change tax filings and divert money to off-the-books accounts. The more I dug, the worse it became. She had even been secretly transferring money into shell accounts and using the funds for her personal gain. I couldn't let this go. I knew I had to act, but things were about to get much worse. I started noticing that Joan was trying to sabotage my work. She knew I had taken on some responsibilities in the family business after Daniel's death, and she wasn't happy about it. It started with small things, discrediting me in front of the staff, spreading rumors about my capabilities, and undermining my authority. But then it escalated. One afternoon, I received an anonymous tip from one of the employees saying that Joan was planning to frame me for embezzlement. She had been manipulating the company's finances to make it look like I was the one misappropriating funds, all to get me fired and take over the company entirely. That was the final straw. I immediately began recording every conversation with Joan and every email that passed through the company's system. I set up hidden cameras in my office and in the areas where Joan frequented. I knew she was crafty, but I also knew I couldn't let her ruin everything. It wasn't until I found the smoking gun that I knew I had her. Joan had been careless. Received an encrypted file from an anonymous source within the company. It was a series of emails between Joan and several of the company's financial advisors. The emails outlined how Joan had been embezzling funds from the company and using them for personal gain. It also included plans on how she would frame me by planting falsified evidence that implicated me in the financial discrepancies. She had no idea that I had access to these files. No idea that I was collecting all the evidence needed to destroy her. I spent that night preparing for the confrontation. I went through all the recordings, piecing together the lies she'd told, the actions she had taken to manipulate everyone. The more I dug, the more disgusted I became by her betrayal. The next morning, I walked into Joan's office, my heart pounding with anticipation. She had no idea that I was about to expose her for everything she had done. "I've had enough of your lies," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I know everything. I know about the money you stole from the company, The vacations you took with funds that didn't belong to you, the lies you told the family, and your plans to frame me. Her eyes went wide. She started to stammer, trying to deflect, trying to act innocent, but I wasn't having it. "I've got all the proof," I said, holding up a USB drive. "Emails, bank statements, recorded conversations. You won't be able to talk your way out of this one." For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The mask she had worn for so long was slipping. She knew I had won. The next few days were a whirlwind. I took the evidence straight to the board members of the company and to the authorities. They were shocked by what they saw. Joan was removed from her position as CFO, and she was arrested for embezzlement. The media picked up the story, and soon everyone knew what she had done. The family business was in shambles, but the damage to Joan's reputation was far worse. She lost everything: the money, the control, the luxury, and in the end, the family turned their back on her. No one wanted anything to do with a thief and a liar. As for me, I took back control of my life. The house Daniel and I had worked for was still mine. I had been through the worst, but I had come out stronger, more determined than ever to rebuild what Joan had tried to tear down. Joan may have thought she could destroy me, but in the end, it was she who lost everything. Thank you for watching.